we've got Todd just on time as always, and I'm going to invite everybody in now for the panel discussion for the next, I think it's 45 minutes, so it's going to get quite rowdy. And obviously Todd is my brother from another mother, and so it's great to have him on there. It's great to have Anna back, obviously, and of course Paul. And we may be joined by double Paul, who's not his double doppelganger, it's actually Andrew Turner, but he clicked very quickly at Paul's unique URL, so he's kind of his digital twin, shall we call it, for a moment. But because Todd's new to the show, Todd, do you want to tell them a little bit about yourself and what you're up to at the moment?
Sure. So long-time engineer, tester, author, speaker, etc. I currently have the opportunity to work for Splunk, where I'm a field solutions engineer. So basically, we look at what are the capabilities that our customers need, and how is it that we as a very small team can build them quickly. So we deploy new capabilities in 2 to 12 weeks, and these going out to many large enterprise organizations to leverage our capabilities in a number of different ways.
And you're dialing all the way in from Philly kind of direction.
Sunny Wilmington, Delaware, the home of Joe Biden.
That's what we like to hear. I do love Joe, and it kind of opens up, I guess, part of taking kind of the conversation that Anna had and we were having before about my duplicate Apple payment area. I know you've got experience, especially in observability more recently, and exhaust data around understanding with a bit more detail how you trace back where my transaction ended up. Do you think this is who should be looking after my duplicate transaction? Is it an ops one or is it a dev? How would you get to the bottom of it?
Well, I guess that one is a very interesting one, and I guess as we think of the context of the conversation around kind of DevOps versus OpsDev, I think it's a very relevant conversation today, as it was, I think, when we started it, maybe back in like 2014, 2015. But taking some of those fundamentals of, maybe it's less of whose problem is it today, because I think it's everyone's problem. It's a challenge that, yes, we have duplicate transactions, et cetera, et cetera. Well, who cares about it? Does the business care about it? Yes. Does IT and the dev and the application teams care about it? Maybe not as much. IT operations, do they care about it? Again, maybe not. However, I strongly believe that everyone should care about it. And again, if we were to put a label like OpsDev onto a practice or an approach, I think that would be very relevant in a way that we could look at how do we solve that problem. And again, there's a few quotes that I've taken from a number of different people over the years that I could kind of read to you on, what does that definition look like, which I'm sure we will get to. But I think in solving that problem of, hey, we've got duplicate transactions, or hey, my metrics or my traces or my logs or any of the above, and again, are we looking at things like the red metrics? What is it that's important? And as we look at those different KPIs and metrics, who cares about them? Maybe that's the first part of the conversation.
Yeah, I love that. And, we had that conversation. I think we were driving through Scotland at the time, and for the Performance Advisory Council, and it was kind of this question around, if we think about exec scorecard and we think about this kind of viewpoint about KPIs and what matters to who, from a customer success team, the fact that duplicate payments have happened, they care about it and they're probably measured on it. And the thing is, all this exhaust data doesn't funnel very well unless you build a platform or an application to then, interface and take that information, give them caller IDs around how many successful calls they've done and the duration of those. What does quality mean? What does success mean? What does value mean? It's something that we're notoriously bad about. And this is where I kind of got quite upset with the industry under the banner of information technology, because we're rubbish at information exchange. Not only communication, that most of us are on the spectrum, but the fact that we just don't exchange information that well. So, you know, we've got the technology, and I think that is always one of those focuses, but actually bringing the information flow, I think is really important. And you know, obviously the stuff that you're doing with Splunk and kind of the stuff that, you know, Anna was kind of talking about actually bringing that stuff together, visualizing it, understanding the workload, and not calling it workload for a second, but understanding it and whose responsibility and, you know, where that should sit within the organization at different levels. And that kind of links into where Iman was kind of talking about from a shifting up quality perspective. Is there is a quality metric, but we don't necessarily understand it. You know, one of my pet hates is, you know, if I tweet Tim and say, Tim, you know, I got a duplicate payment, you know, who's going to see that? Who's going to resolve that? Who's going to ticket that? Who's going to put that in their service management? Who's going to then allocate that into some kind of priority and into some sprint and get it resolved and investigated and incidents raised? Nobody is the answer. Is it's just going to go off to the Twitter spill, and, you know, no social analytics has been used. So talking of social analytics and social beings, obviously I'd like to introduce Paul Gerard 2.0, which is a slightly younger version of him, but actually is Andrew Turner, which I will try and rename your name. But Andy runs the G&T podcasting sessions, which I'm sure Anna and Emel will probably kind of say, sign me up, not only to the podcast, but maybe to the G&Ts as well, but it's a bit early over there. But he's also the host of the London Test Automation group, which is one of the biggest ones, and it was founded by one of the guys from, I think it's Facebook. Maybe you can do the better intro to yourself, Andrew.
Yeah, hi, nice to meet you all. Nice to see you all. So I'm Andrew. London TAD was set up about 10 years ago by a guy called Shashi Jagtap. He's worked in banking, and then he joined maybe one of the tech companies you just mentioned, who has this CEO called Tim. I now kind of am front of stage, and he's behind the stage, kind of helping out, but he can't do anything visibly. But he runs DevOps within that large tech titan. Yeah, no, so it was interesting listening. Just to thanks for coming on this panel. Listening to Todd actually he just triggered reminded me of actually a story from 10 years ago when I went to one of the very early AWS meetup groups in London, and there was literally about 25 of us at Just Eat in Holborn, and Ian Massingham was there. I don't know if you know Ian Massingham. He's kind of quite senior in Amazon now, AWS, and what they talked about on their website, because obviously they've gone digital, was that they had complete accountability. So they had the Indian meals, the pizzas, the Italian meals, you know, all these different categories within their website, and they had different teams, and literally the devs and the ops team were completely accountable for that part of the website, and they had a separate payment team, like a separate checkout team. But the whole team culture, organization structure was very cohesive. And also had a lot of monitoring boards on the screen, like the whole wall was kind of covered in Samsung TVs, and you could see where all these people were buying all the kind of takeaways all over the world. Basically, it's got popping up like that. But I think that just triggered when you said, Todd, about that thing about, is it OpsDev, is it DevOps? I think it is that kind of one team approach that we need to, you know, rather than these functional silos, we need to think about what is the one team. And I know that there's obviously I know, you know, Patrick Dubois, if he was listening, he'd say, no, you need to call it DevOps or Gene Kim or whatever. But you know, I think that my final comment is I was actually at a conference 2 weeks ago, first physical one since COVID, down in Cornwall, Agile on the Beach, it was the 10th anniversary of Agile on the Beach. Yeah, you've been there, Todd? Very good conference. And Devlin did the keynote on the first day, and what he said was actually that, a bit like what Iman was talking about a bit earlier, about the human side. People get really obsessed about tools. Oh, you know, what tool do you use, and what tool is that? I know, Anna, much respect to you, Anna, but it's the thing is that actually the people side is getting, you know, sometimes gets overlooked significantly. And what they were saying, he did a retrospective of the last 20 years of Agile, and some of the principles around software craftsmanship and about how things, you know, should be working. And he said he's asked to the whole audience of 350 people was, how do we put the human stuff back into what we do? and have those kind of, I know it's difficult being difficult with COVID, but actually how do we attack that rather than actually hiding behind, you onboard into a new company, you get your laptop, you get your Slack account, you get your Jira account, and then you just hide behind all these tools, and where is the human interface, human interaction? So it was interesting listening to you, your two little talks. My third point and final point is that, and I'm not going to go through the detail of this, but when Paul presented a bit earlier about vaxxers, all I can say is I'm obviously much younger looking than Paul. No, joking. But we're of a similar heritage. And I used to use vaxxers and PDPs and DEX stuff many years ago. So yeah, exactly. May the force be with you. So lovely to be here. And the final point I was going to say was about shift up and shift left. I had a call with a speaker this morning that's going to be potentially presenting later on this year, and they want to speak about shift left, but maybe I need to go back to them and need to say shift up, I think is the new phrase. Shift left and shift right are so passé, so last year.
Absolutely. And what I love about that, and I'm going to kind of jump on it for a second, is Hogan's my favorite Starbucks, because everybody from Just Eat comes down and does their meetings there, just pre-COVID. And I sat there listening to their product engineering team talking, and I obviously, don't have to sign an NDA when I'm having a coffee, thankfully. But yeah, they were saying about, oh well, what we want for Just Eat is we want to be able to put the health score on each one of the individual retailers, but that information comes from a third party, which do the independent checks that give it a grade, and therefore will be a requirement for us to do that for takeaways. And what I liked about that story, that kind of overhearing that, was I kind of was relating back to what myself and Todd did about 5 years ago when setting up the World Digital Report. Was could you give companies a grade based on quality to kind of say, you're a D or a C based on, like-rated people, that you can understand that there's a quality metrics that they need to strive for, and, actually based on feedback and customers. And yes, you might say, oh, well, there's Trustpilot and there's this and there's that. But part of it is, we set ourselves an aim, but we can't really tell where we are and where we need to go. And that's why we love applying these assessments and methodologies and approach. And I know, let's do Six Sigma. No, let's do Seven Sigma because it's better than Six Sigma. Part of it is, we like applying, manufacturing blueprints that work fantastic for making widgets, but not really for software. And, we evolved this thinking as kind of what Andy said. And, earlier in the year, back in February, we ran the Agile Festival with some of the original signatories. And we got into that same kind of debate about, 20 years on, the only thing that's not agile about the Agile Manifesto is it hasn't changed. But part of it is those engineering things that Paul kind of talked about when he started his early career. And I know we've all got those kind of stories that engineering's kind of moved slightly. The discipline of going and learning an engineering thing compared to maybe being abstracted a level away from that complexity of systems in their core area. And of course, we could have invited Dave Snowden and covered Serafit here, but Dave would probably have taken over slightly. But part of it is, I think, just because it's complex, or actually there's a lot of unknowns. Part of it is there's different teams doing different things. And Anna, you kind of talked in your session about the fact that people understand mainframe and they kind of understand heritage. We'll use the word heritage because your house won't get knocked down if it's listed, right? So heritage products that don't change that much, we understand them more. We've done all the requirements engineering, we've done all the engineering practices, and they're built to last. Whereas actually, software today changes and gets thrown away very quickly and doesn't outlive the hardware underneath it. So do you think we need to go back to some of those original engineering principles, or if this kind of throwaway economy of API estates and microservices the way forwards?
In a lot of ways, I think yes, right? Building things to last means we can work on a new thing in a different direction, right? We innovate somewhere else because this is working really well. And we don't just try to rework it into something better. And that's kind of the difference between, innovation and just making something better. So innovation is going off in a new direction. And so I do think, it comes back, and Andy said something just a minute ago about the interactions between people, and it brought me back to the original Agile Manifesto. And I feel like when we think about process, right, and one of the things in the Agile Manifesto is this people and interactions before process. And I think we've forgotten that as a general ecosystem of everybody developing software, right? It's just the same in a lot of ways. To me, it's the same thing that fell down about the waterfall software development methodology, right? People forgot how it was actually defined and what the process was behind it and why it matters and why it's good in some cases, right? When I first started doing Agile, the manifesto is so important, and we forget about it because it's really more about mindset, right? And we build the processes around it, but it's the mindsets that we do in the people and interactions. And so when Iman talks about quality thinking, right, and standardizing quality across teams and delivery of, Jonathan, you're saying long-term software, right, that's going to last and be stable. It's really about what is it that we're trying to build, right? And it depends on the industry. It depends on the company, right? You want a modern interface. You want that front end to be beautiful, and you want it to work on their latest widget and latest device that Apple comes out with, or, you want it working in that new area, but that's just the face, right? And yeah, go innovate, do the greatest new face, but you're behind that, right? Should be stable and reliable. And, that's where mainframe has really had its sticking point in a lot of companies. Is it is sturdy and it is reliable and it does high transaction processing, so they can rely on it and put a pretty face on it. So I think I answered your question, but maybe roundabout.
It's incredible, Anna, that I don't know if you know this, but so I nearly tweeted about this 2 weeks ago, and I missed stuff. I forgot to do it, but 2 weeks ago on Friday, it was the 10-year anniversary of Mark Andreessen's "Software is Eating the World" article in the Wall Street Journal. It's quite incredible. But 10 years ago, and I mean, God knows what it's going to be like in 10 more years. We will. The video that or the kind of session that you did for Iman, where we got the robot. Maybe we'll all be robots.
Downloading consciousness, but onto that is what I really wanted to kind of add in. So, I've actually switched recently, not just because I keep an order duplicate products from Apple, but I've actually moved back to using a BlackBerry.
Wow.
So I'm supporting Canada here, right? And I could tell you a story where I accidentally ended up in the RIM headquarters in Canada in Toronto by mistake. So I went in the wrong building, but that's another one. But actually, I'm now using this. So this is genuinely, as you can probably see with the connection, this is my main phone. And it is a touchscreen because, they finally did get there. But, these are bomb-proof, just like the Nokias, right? But the reason that I use it is because it's got 480 hours standby time. But also, this gives me the ability to actually use it as a tethering spot that where I am in the world, which is the middle of nowhere, actually has signal, whereas my iPhone doesn't have signal, which is using 5G. And as I can demonstrate here, it has 1 bar of signal in my area, so 1 bar in the top left-hand corner, whereas the BlackBerry has, just to demonstrate the difference in quality of product, has 3 bars. So, part of it is, there's a new and old, but also I think there's a perception around the brand quality, when Iran joins us later on from Perfecto, he would have been saying, well, in Canada, there's still quite a high percentage of BlackBerry devices that are used, and mainly this is because of the aerial that's built into it, and the frequency actually supports more widely in Canada. You get a signal, but part of it is that we all think, maybe we've all got stories about BlackBerries, but we know they're battle hardened, right? Traders were using them because they were encrypted and they were secure, and maybe that was a bad thing for BBM in the sense of, you know, deals, trades, and insider trading suddenly never got tracked. But, you know, part of it is
they're also waterproof, because my wife threw one in the swimming pool once when I was on holiday because I was working too much with it. So that's other sturdiness as well, ruggedness.
I think the word legacy has kind of acquired it's like a derogatory term in most people's kind of usage. And I think that derives from IT directors who basically have a job survival lifetime of about 18 months. And so they fly in, the first thing they look at is what can we change? Let's go in the cloud, let's offshore, let's bring it onshore, let's get rid of the mainframe. And legacy system, let's get rid of the legacy systems. And the problem is, legacy is the wrong word. It should be lasting. These are lasting systems, and they last because although they were built probably, you know, many years ago with a waterfall approach, they've had hundreds and thousands of patches. So incrementally, they've improved over many, many years, and they've also, just by being in use, are battle hardened. You know, they've suffered all the slings and arrows and whatever, and we haven't figured out how to build lasting systems, because a lot of the so-called innovation and new systems that are built come and then businesses go out of business and then they go again, or they get bought and then thrown away and then absorbed into another bank or whatever. And so we are in this kind of almost, I wouldn't say throw away, but they're all transient, aren't they? And the thing is, we know the stuff that are running on mainframes will be running in 37 years time or whatever it is. Well, an insurance company I had dealings with not so long ago, their phone number was something 370370, which kind of told you something about them. And their strategic plan basically said mainframes until 2037. And I think that was 15 years ago. You know, and that's their strategy. And the thing is, there's nothing wrong with that. IBM are going to be.
Is 37 the CEO's lucky number or something?
Well,
sounds like it.
But to kind of bring you back in, and I'm going to do this for example purposes, but also for shock value, right? So, Paul, can you tell us what technology you're developing with to do a DevOps project that you started today for maybe the largest pharmaceutical company in the world? So what have you been asked to do as of Monday this week to implement DevOps with, why?
Well, they are using a package which is written in Lisp, which I think was invented in 1959, and remarkably, it's still going. But so I thought, well, what the hell do I know about Lisp? I think I saw it when I was a student many, many years ago, and maybe wrote about 50 lines of code in it and thought, this is a bit weird. Anyway, I bought a book and I'm going to try and learn it again in the meantime, just out of interest. But the thing is, it's a really fashionable language, because I think Clojure is like a bit of a hot thing, and functional programming, a bit of a hot thing at the moment. It's both of those. I mean, the guy, I can't remember his name now, Johnson or Jackson or Anderson, I don't know, something, who invented it, was a real visionary, or he just got really lucky to invent something that was lasting. And it's still lively. It's not as big as Java, of course not, but it's still going. So it's stuff like that is still out there.
Amazing.
So 60 years old language, then to go in to actually do DevOps. And what I love about the story, which I can't give too much away, but you know, they actually use it for COVID vaccination trials and stuff like that. So you know, it's not like it's not relevant in this day and age based on what's happening. And you know, we've all kind of covered the sexy stuff, like you know, the work that I've done with MIT and the contact tracing and you know, all that vaccine passport, which also seems really relevant. But you know, the fact that you know the organizations, you know, and 90% of all transactions still happening in COBOL, you know, it kind of gives us a glimpse into the future, into this kind of matrix. And when I think of matrix, I obviously think of Todd and you know how he actually does. He looks at code. So he does, you know, when you see that person walking down in the red dress, that's how he sees all the Splunk observability. And I did actually watch a Splunk video the other day where they're using augmented reality to hover over real switches to see what the throughput of each, I'm going to use the word pipe, and it's maybe because I spent too long playing Mario as a kid, but to see what the throughput is, where the switch is delegated, just by using these kind of tools to look at and understand at a network level. Do you see this metaverse of blurring the boundaries between using technology, augmentation to really change it with the physical world as well?
I guess it sounded like Jonathan probably targeted towards myself. And what I would tell you is that augmented reality type thing, or visual reality, is very real. And I think it was yesterday at the Apple conference that, believe it or not, they had our Splunk technology there. And exactly what you're suggesting is they had one of the new iPads, and they had our technology loaded on it, and they were holding it over one of the servers to show all the different technical bits within that infrastructure, so that you could then see on the screen. And again, for people who have not seen this before, it's kind of wow, you can do that. So you could see, actually network throughput, CPU utilization, all of those different bits that would then show up on the screen as you would hold that over top of that piece of infrastructure. But it becomes quite interesting. If you were to walk through a data center as an example and have different racks that were up and running, you would want to understand, well, what applications are running on these? And again, all those typical metrics, traces, and logs that we would typically be used to seeing. But again, being able to literally hold a device like an iPad or whatever other technology you're favorite to, but hold that over and then be able to have that representation on your screen, all leveraging Splunk technology. So again, a data to everything platform, just massive amounts of data that we're all forced to look at today, but very easy visual representations of that data. And again, one that's easy for humans to interact with.
That was in the WWDC keynote, was it yesterday? Is that right?
It was, yeah. I might try and find it, because it was a fascinating piece. And I think blurring the lines, this is why I kind of named my section Metaverse, right? And I'm actually doing some stuff with quite a few different organizations, health organizations, and you probably can see in the back there, I'm doing some stuff with Hawaii and their SDGs, so their Sustainable Development Goals, and how you help people understand, how do I make difference to climate change at a micro level that would have a cascading effect in a community kind of effect based on little changes, little recommendations. And Todd, you probably, I've talked about things like the Copenhagen Smart City platform that we did in the data exchange. Part of it is, data is oil. We know that, we've gone through phases of, whatever the sexiest thing, big data, data lakes, data oceans, but still kind of getting the data to the right person at the right time to make it actionable, to make it, behavior changing, to make a decision of we go this way or we go that way, and, keeping the human in the loop. To me, this is where human augmentation kind of comes in, and, forgetting Amazon Turk and those kind of platforms. And, I'm going to throw it back to Iman to kind of get her viewpoint, but, it feels like Tim probably is slightly disconnected from the quality and the perception of the brand and the technology and how advanced it is, and if they've got a quality problem or not. Because unless he has some super kind of quality dashboard what says good, bad, ugly, how do we get it to those people who have the budget, have the control, and make a decision that if I put more money in here, I'm going to get a better product or a better experience for my customer over here, and be able to make that decision of, should I do it here, keep the lights on, or invest in something new and sexy, or invest in what I've got at the moment and make it better. So how do we even start with that?
I think they need to agree. Again, this is why I keep saying that everyone needs to be aligned to fix and to agree on one quality level. I give an example. We are all very patient, and we don't look that much on the quality when it comes with a new product, or a product that is out of the market. It's the new one. So we are so happy that it exists that we allow it to bug. Okay, so the quality will not be that high if we compare it to another product which we can find everywhere. And for it, then we have to agree on the level of quality, and for me it must be higher. So this is a small difference, first of all. So for me, when it comes from innovation, we first need to target the new thing and not the quality thing. Once it's reached, it's okay if it's not that much nice. But when it comes with other products and other projects, I think we really need to focus on the level of quality we need to put, depending on the money, depending on your objective, depending on your departments, depending on the business. This is why I keep saying that everyone needs to get involved on the definition of the quality. Everyone needs to understand why they're doing this. If, let's say, if the company doesn't have that much budget, they need to communicate it to everyone else. Like this, everyone will say, okay, with this amount of money, which kind of level of quality we can reach. Because what I see today is the reverse. We test, we agree on quality, but it's only at the product or the project stage. If they decided to have a higher quality, this is good, this is their decision, but they did not align with what it needs, what it means. If you guys want this quality, it means that we need this tool, we need maybe this process, we need this budget. So this is why we really need, it's very important, and the more we are going, and the more it will be important to align everyone.
I suppose my question with you, Iman, though, is about who you think in the business cares about quality. Who at the board level do you think cares about it, and who should care about it? Any thoughts on that?
Everyone, because humanly, without speaking about the work, we are all sensitive on the quality. We are human. We are all naturally looking for quality. So it's naturally everyone's responsibility. This is why I like this sentence. But the issue, it's like agile, it's like DevOps. People just reduced the idea on the product and on the project. But I personally lived a great process, a V process, but with a huge collaboration. I had much more quality with the people, quality with interactions, quality of product, even if we were not in agile mode. The difference is the mindset. You said it, Anna.
I suppose not to be controversial, but it reminds me of the famous agile or Scrum cartoon with the ham and eggs. Yeah, you seen that one with the pigs, the pigs and the chicken?
Yeah, they give.
Who's committed and who's clucking around and playing rhetoric. Yeah, that's one of the issues I see in organisations, is that there's a lot of rhetoric still about capability.
One of the things that Andy,
Nice.
One of the things that you might remember in the 80s is quality improvement programs.
I wasn't born then.
We all so we all went. I say we all. I mean, okay, of an era. God, everyone's going to think I'm 107 at this rate. Anyway,
we're going to run a book on it. Guess Paul's age.
Projects, programs of improving quality, and none of them delivered. None of them. And okay, so I thought, okay, I've got a few scars, and then I got my first job with a testing services company, like a small boutique kind of services company in testing. We were very few on the ground back in the day. And Paul Herslik, who I respect a lot, taught me all I know, almost, you know. He said, don't use the Q word in this office. And I said, well, why? He said, just don't. And he never really explained it. He just threw his hands in the air and said, quality, you know, he just despaired, because he said, well, it's a waste of time even talking about it. And his argument, and my argument rather, I think what he might say is, everyone has a different perception of it. So you will never get agreement. It's like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder. It's not a thing. It's a relationship between a user or a customer or a stakeholder and the product. It's a relationship. It's not a thing. And so when we try, it's called reification, try to make a thing out of something that isn't a thing. And so my suggestion,
go on.
Oh, I was going to say, my suggestion is we don't talk about quality so much as, if we want the senior people to pay attention, we need to talk about the things they care about, which is their business goals, which is what they're measured on, and risks to those business goals. And that's an end to it. So the story I would add to that is I did a piece of work for a financial services company who was setting up a new business. They were a big outfit, but they set up a little business to make money, obviously. And there was like a CEO, a project manager, some kind of assistant, a desk, and 2 phones. You know, that was it. It was a small, everything else was outsourced. So there was an ISP who were going to host a system. There was a company building the system. There was an agency who were going to operate the system. And I got hired to do a test strategy, and I sort of scheduled a meeting, which basically said, let's do a risk workshop to see what could go wrong with this system. And everyone was invited, the suppliers. The CEO was copied, but not invited. Anyway, so I got there first, and I'm getting ready with my whiteboard and all this kind of gear. And the CEO walks in. I said, hello, how you doing? And we got on, and I said, what are you doing here? Because I didn't invite you. Not saying I didn't want him. I'm saying it's really good that you're here, but you weren't on the invite. I mean, why are you here? And he said, when I saw the agenda, I thought I would be negligent as a CEO if I didn't attend. And that was it. That sold it for me. If you can get the right language into the heads of the people, the higher ups, the things that their lives depend on, or their working lives depend on, you've got them. And the thing is, we use the wrong language. Quality is so vague. It's not, it's, if everyone's responsible for quality, no one is responsible for quality.
If I can give you a 45-second example. So in the 80s and 90s, I was in a place called GE, General Electric, when Jack Welch was there. And he introduced Six Sigma and Lean Six Sigma and something like that. Gary Reiner was the chief information officer of GE. He worked directly for Jack. Nobody was going on Six Sigma training. Everybody was kind of like going, oh no, we're not interested. Gary Reiner said, everybody books on the training, otherwise you should reconsider your career options. It was an email that sent across the whole of GE, hundreds of thousands of people. Immediately, all courses were booked out completely. So I'm not saying, but that's an example of, you know, top-down mandate and actually engineering it. And the thing I would say on you know, being a Six Sigma black belt personally, going through that training, is that actually the voice of the customer, which is basically kind of what you're saying, the voice of the customer, the voice of the stakeholder, that's what should drive, you know, a lot around this stuff. And being scientific about how you measure things. I see a lot of people now, even, you know, a number of decades later, still not being scientific enough about how they measure stuff. And yet we have got the data. We can get hold of the data. So that's why my hair's all falling out working for GE, and gone grey.
I guess quickly, because we got 7 minutes, and I'm going to pass it to Todd quickly. Go on.
Okay, sorry, I just finished just quickly. Sorry. Okay, just to finish quickly, I agree that the customer feelings needs to drive, but not always, because the customers changes his mind. We are customers, right? So we change our mind. We want something. Once we have it in front, we don't like it. So yes, we need to count it, but it doesn't have to drive. Just another thing about also what Paul said. Yes, everyone needs to be involved in this defining quality. And you said it right, quality is relative. It depends on everyone. This is why everyone needs to sit together to define it. It's the same way in your house, you want to put a color on your wall. You want a red, but your husband wants a blue. So which color you're going
That's
to
not a negotiation. We know who always wins.
No. Of course, but this is not good. It's not fair. I don't think it's fair.
I say that all the time. It's not fair. It's just not fair. Yeah, exactly.
Maybe that's the
That's what
thing. So I'm going to throw it back over to Todd and then get some closing notes from Anna anyway, because I know I'm going to rejoin people for the later session. But, you know, I'm going to give one example because I feel like I'm missing out on these. But I do remember when Tim came in at an Apple meeting and he did ask the question, and he was, you know, wearing sandals and shorts, and he kind of said, you know, are these the guys that are going to get my, you know, our insight in faster so we can understand what the customer's using? Because obviously every transaction goes through the App Store, through SAP, and they want to know which ones to list. And he came at it from a customer's perspective of how do we give them better recommendations based on what we've been doing instead of every week, you know, and why is the technology slowing us down? And I think, you know, kind of what Iman's saying, and, you know, giving the nod to kind of it being, you know, up and down, kind of really understanding what that means. But then, you know, I'm going to give a last shout out to Niall Lynch, who unfortunately passed away between the last DevOps festival I had the honor to do a podcast with him around time to quality, and he had some really interesting thoughts around metrics of how long it is until the perceptions come in, and that it's an acceptable product or a heritage product or whatever we want to call it, right? But Todd, I know you've in the past you kind of said, you know, you have to literally rebuild an app to get that perception back that it's fast, it's reliable, the brand's good. And I think you even worked with a bank once where the experience was so slow that you guys decided to implement a mini game that you could switch the phone to the other direction to then play the mini game whilst waiting for your banking app to load up. So, you know, part of it is, you know, we see these problems, you know, there's solutions to these problems, there's experiences, and, you know, I like Iman's kind of what she said about, you know, actually feelings, about how people emotionally feel about software. And I think maybe we've never, you know, expressed it, and we nearly did when we kind of all came out with the fact that we've you know, we've been part, you know, I use the punch card, and, you know, it's been 28 years since I last used my punch card, and we kind of open up our emotions a little bit and kind of talk about how software makes us feel. And with that, I'm going to, that really difficult one, I'm going to pass it over to Todd, and then with the kind of that question, and then maybe Anna with a final few words about her feelings of joy or happiness that software brings to her life as well. So I'll let either one of you drop in, and then we're going to go into a break, and then after the break we have a NASA, SpaceX and Wheel of Fortune from the Dark Arts Lord. So, you know, part of it will bring it back on track with a bit of fun and enjoyment into what was a fantastic panel discussion. I think we probably solved the entire world. But Anna, do you want to close us out? And I know, Todd, you're going to hopefully come back later as well, and maybe Anna will join us for the final, I'm going to say final showdown, but it feels a little bit.
Yes, so, you know, you talk about the joy and the ups and the downs with software, and I've been working with software for a long time, and I love software because we have so much ability to affect it, right? It's something that we can actually control in our lives, and there's so much we cannot, but it also is extremely disappointing sometimes, right? As we've talked about those disappointing situations, and as I grew into a product manager, really learning to listen to the customer, and Iman, you said the customer isn't always right? They aren't, but their input is important. Right, so listening to the inputs of the customer, listening to the inputs of the CEO and of the financial guys and of the sales guys and the field engineers, and working with them, and then figuring out how to speak their language, because Paul, you're right. Even quality is not the only word. That doesn't mean the same thing to everybody. I find that the English language is extremely difficult. And, you know, we all actually say something a little bit different and hear something a little bit different. And so my joy working with software comes with working with people and hearing the different perspectives, and then trying to bring sense to it all and make decisions.
And so on that bombshell, we're going to break into the break. Thanks, Todd, for sending an email to me, which I am going to read during the break. I'm looking forward to seeing you all. Hopefully you're all invited for the final showdown, guns up, ready, and you know, have a break, take a thing, and then I'll be bringing in the Dark Lord Wizard superstar Paul Grossman after this short break. So thanks, guys.
Thank
Ciao.
you. All right,
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.